Why do family disappointments hurt so much? You know, I've asked myself that question more than once. Because if we're honest, the deepest pain in life usually doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people we never imagined could hurt us. Maybe that's why family pain feels different. When someone you barely know disappoints you, it hurts. But when it's your own son, your daughter, your brother, your sister, or someone you've loved for most of your life, it reaches a place inside you that almost nothing else can reach. And what makes it even harder is that you don't stop loving them. That's the confusing part. You can feel deeply hurt and still love someone with all your heart. Sometimes people think those two things can't exist together, but they can. Maybe you've been carrying that contradiction for years. Maybe you've smiled every time your family got together while quietly carrying a wound that nobody else could see. Maybe you've learned to say, "I'm fine," because explaining the pain felt harder than carrying it. And after a while, you stopped talking about it. Not because it stopped hurting, but because you become tired of trying to explain something that words never seem to describe completely. I don't know what happened in your family. I don't know who disappointed you. Or maybe you're the one who feels that you disappointed someone you love. Either way, I'm really glad you're here today. Because before we talk about healing, before we talk about forgiveness, before we talk about moving forward, I think we need to do something much simpler. We need to admit that family disappointment hurts, and pretending it doesn't has never healed anyone. I've noticed something over the years. When people talk about family pain, they usually talk about what happened. He said this, she did that. They never called. They forgot. They chose someone else. But I don't think that's where the deepest pain lives. The deepest pain usually lives inside the expectations we never knew we had. Because somewhere, without even realizing it, we wrote a story. A story where our family would always be there, where love would always be returned, where loyalty would never be questioned. And when life doesn't follow that story, it feels like something inside us breaks. Not because people are perfect, but because our heart hoped they would be. I remember talking with a father whose son hadn't spoken to him for several years. He never asked me to fix the relationship. He only said something I'll never forget. Every morning, I still wonder if today will be the day my phone rings. That wasn't anger. That was hope, trying very hard not to disappear. And maybe that's what makes family disappointment so exhausting. It isn't only what happened. It's what we keep waiting for long after it happened. Sometimes we don't realize that we've placed our life on hold, waiting for an apology, waiting for a conversation, waiting for someone to become the person we've always hoped they would be. please don't misunderstand me. Hope is beautiful. Love is beautiful. Never stop loving. But sometimes our peace cannot depend on another person's decision. Because if it does, we hand them the keys to a room inside our heart that only God should be allowed to enter. And that's a very heavy burden for another human being to carry. Maybe, without realizing it, we expected someone to heal a place that only God could gently restore. And I think that's where healing quietly begins. Can I tell you something that took me a very long time to understand? Healing doesn't always begin when the other person changes. Sometimes healing begins the day we stop waiting for them to change first. I know that isn't easy to hear, because a part of us still whispers, maybe next Christmas, maybe next birthday, maybe next phone call. And sometimes those moments do come. Families reconcile. People apologize. Relationships are rebuilt. I've seen that happen. But I've also seen something else. I've seen beautiful people spend years waiting for a conversation that never came. And little by little, their own life became smaller. Their joy became quieter. Their dreams were placed on a shelf while they waited for someone else to unlock the door. I don't think that's the life God wants for us. Not because He asks us to stop loving, but because He never asks us to stop living. Those are not the same thing. You can still love someone deeply. You can still pray for them. You can still leave the door open without leaving your own life standing still. There comes a moment when you gently say, I cannot choose your path, but I can choose how I walk mine. And strangely, that isn't giving up. It's trusting. Trusting that God can keep working in places you cannot reach. There is a verse that has stayed with me for many years. As far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. I love those words because they are honest. They don't say everything depends on you. They simply say, do the part that is yours. The rest you place into God's hands. And maybe that's not the ending you were hoping for, but it might be the beginning of the peace you've been looking for. Sometimes peace arrives before the relationship does, and that's okay. Before we finish, I'd like to leave you with one thought. What if the greatest gift you could give yourself is permission to stop carrying what no longer belongs on your shoulders? Not because it didn't matter, not because it didn't hurt, but because you've carried it long enough. You know, I've met people who spent 20 or 30 years replaying the same conversation inside their minds, thinking, if only I had said this, if only they had done that, if only. But life doesn't move forward through if only. Life moves forward one peaceful step at a time. Maybe the person who disappointed you will never fully understand what they did. Maybe they'll never apologize the way you hoped. And that's one of the hardest truths we ever have to accept. But here's something I've learned. Closure doesn't always come from another person. Sometimes it quietly grows inside your own heart. The day you decide that your future will no longer be written by yesterday's pain. I believe God sees every tear that was never understood, every prayer you whispered when nobody else was listening, and every time you chose not to let bitterness become the final chapter of your story. Maybe today nothing changes in your family. Maybe tomorrow your phone still won't ring. But if tonight you go to bed with just a little more peace than you had yesterday, then something beautiful has already begun. Because healing is rarely one big moment. More often, it's a quiet journey, one gentle step after another. And maybe today, you just took your first one. Take good care of your heart. It's been carrying a lot of love. And love, even when it's been hurt, is still one of the most beautiful things about being human. I'll see you next Saturday.